Welcome to Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. With Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks, Bryan Cush from Sawdust Bureau, and Robin Lewis from RobinLewisMakes. Hi everyone, I hope you're all very well. This is episode number 33, Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast. As always, I want to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Robin. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. And Bryan, how are you?
I'm excellent, Robin. How are you?
Yeah, well, we'll get into that in a second. But my name is Robin Lewis, and welcome to the show, everyone. So, I guess the first thing we should probably start off with is it's been a while. It's been a while since our last show. If I pull up on my podcast, the last publish we did was on the 20th of September.
Okay, exactly a month ago.
Exactly a month ago today, but this episode is going to come out because today is Tuesday, so it'll come out probably on Sunday on the weekend, just to keep the schedule. So it's been over a month since our last episode, which is, it's been a super long time. And a big thank you to everyone who got in touch with me to just ask what was going on.
Oh, really?
I had a few of those as well.
Is everything all right? What's happening? So really appreciate that. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
One of the main reasons we took a break, we're going to get into in a second, but just a little bit of interesting news before we get into that, and this is closely related. You might be able to hear from my voice that I'm not in the best shape. I've been pretty sick the last couple of days, and we were going to record this episode last night, but I had to pull out. As part of being sick, I went and did a COVID test, just to make sure and, try and be a responsible citizen. What an awful experience that is.
Come on, man up, Robin. Wasn't that bad, was it?
Have you guys had one?
I've had a couple, but that's going to be the next story.
Right, okay. So you know all about it. I'll tell you what. So
it's not very pleasant.
The gist of it is they basically take a swab, they stick it in the back of your throat, which some people don't like, I was okay with. Then they stick it up your nose and essentially tickle the back of your skull. And I was a mess. They did it, and my eyes just started to water. Now, obviously, I'm sick as well, so I'm not in the best way. Eyes started to water, and you're in a drive-through, so they're sort of waiting for you to move along.
And you're coughing and sneezing as well.
Coughing and sneezing, and the woman, she sort of looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And I went, "No, I don't think I am." And she's grabbed me some tissues, and I'm wiping, because I couldn't see. I couldn't drive, because my eyes were just... What an awful experience. And I drove out of that, got home, and the first thing I said to Jamie, my wife, was, I really hope that I'm negative, just because I don't want to have to go through that test all over again, because that was horrific. But anyway, the results came back negative, so I don't have it. It was just a...
And you've got a sexy, husky voice for the podcast.
Yeah.
So win-win.
So just a bog standard cold. But so all good. But awesome. In the spirit of COVID, Bryan, you've got some pretty big news for us.
Yeah, I'm actually in a different country right now.
Yeah. Really? Which country would that be, Bryan?
I am in New Zealand.
Ooh.
Been brushing up on the accent.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a long story, but I don't sound like I'm Kiwi, but I am actually. My mum's Kiwi, and I have all my mum's side of the family are over here, and my grandfather took a bit of a turn during COVID lockdown, and I've been particularly close to him pretty much my whole life. He was the guy that inspired me to make things and build furniture. He was an architect who became a furniture maker, so it's basically, it was a really tough time. And then a friend of mine, an Irish guy, managed to get into New Zealand with his Kiwi girlfriend, and I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah.
I hadn't even really thought about it. At one stage, my wife had said to me, maybe you should go over and see your grandfather in case anything happens and you don't get to see him again. But just the idea of 2 weeks quarantine, I could probably only go for 2 weeks and then 2 weeks quarantine back, and it's 6 weeks away, and the costs involved and all the stresses. And then it just kind of hit the point in Victoria where I was like, what are we really going to be missing back here? We did a few sums and worked out covering our overheads, and my wife spoke to her work, and she's now able to work remotely. So we're like, well, we'll apply and see if we get accepted. And we applied and we're accepted. And next thing, we were on a very, very empty plane coming across to originally Wellington. And I was thinking, that'd be brilliant. I'll catch up with Joey on the way out. And then we got the bad news upon landing that, no, you're being transferred to Wellington. So they stuck us on another flight and took us to a quarantine hotel there.
Oh, you said Wellington twice. You were going to come. You were going to come to Auckland.
Sorry. Yep, sorry. Yeah. I'm not used to this late record, usually it's early for me. So yeah, originally Auckland, and then they stuck us on another plane down to Wellington, and we did 2 weeks quarantine in a tiny hotel room with a 6-month-old baby.
Crazy.
And it wasn't actually as bad as it sounds.
You said it was just the one room, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, one really small room.
Wow.
There's different conditions. Every hotel's managed differently as well. We were in one of the stricter ones, so your exercise times are set. You can only leave your room if you're escorted by one of the New Zealand Defence Force. So it was pretty intense, but it was a really nice experience, like to sort of get out of Victoria and see something different. It was pretty cool to take my son on his first flight, which was
it's fun,
the most empty plane I've ever been on in my entire life.
I couldn't think of the best way to take a small child on a plane is when there's no one else around you.
Yep.
So.
You don't feel as though you're getting in the way, trying to get bags. There was just nobody there. So
that's awesome.
Going through customs, empty. Going through immigration, empty. And everybody was brilliant. Some people have complained about having to do it. I'm like, it's not that much different from what we've done for the last 6 months in Victoria, except somebody else is cooking all our meals.
Yeah.
So in terms of the exercise, so I was always under the impression that you literally were in that room 24/7.
No, every hotel has to provide an outdoor space for exercise. Some of them are really nice, like there's some on the waterfront in Auckland where you can just sort of wander up and down the jetty. Ours was an underground car park in Wellington.
Oh, jeez.
Which, if you've ever been to Wellington, it tends to be pretty windy and pretty cold.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what an underground car park feels like. But you still took it, and you were allowed to socialise with the other people in quarantine. We're sort of kept in the same group off our flight. Okay. And your exercise time lines up with theirs. So long as you're socially distanced, that was quite a nice time, actually, to sort of... You feel as though you're in the same boat with somebody else rather than just being isolated in your own room.
Yeah.
But and then made it out and got up to see my grandfather and introduced him to his great grandchild, which was brilliant, and it made everything worthwhile. But it's been a crazy going back to the last time we recorded, it feels like a lifetime ago.
I know. Yeah. So much as water's gone under the bridge since then.
Not too long ago, we were saying like nothing seems to be happening in the shop, and we were talking about what are we going to talk about on the podcast. We literally go away for a month and everything's different.
Yeah.
Yep. But it just felt like I caught a flight to another dimension.
Yeah.
Everything here is, totally normal. And
almost nothing's changed once you're out of the airport now.
So weird, but it's brilliant. And still managing to do a bit of work and look at some design jobs for clients. And
are you doing any physical work at all? Or are you at the moment just doing like planning and stuff?
Not at the minute. It's all just planning, quoting.
That's cool.
I redid my website in quarantine, which was
sweet.
Useful. In between trying to get the baby to nap, which was not much fun. But no, I've sort of contemplated maybe looking for a shared workspace here or something, but I just don't know whether it's worthwhile. I think it's
all the setup
kind of better.
And stuff,
like the reason why I came here was to sort of spend time with my family and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And jobs can wait. I think for the time being, like I'm definitely missing being in a workshop. It's pretty weird. Like I've been away 4 weeks now. So yeah, I am missing it badly, but it's one of those things, and it's again, all my clients have been really nice the whole way through COVID. Everybody's sort of been fine to wait for jobs, and you just worry when you get an inquiry and you're like, so I've actually just in managed isolation in New Zealand. I'll be back in 2 to 3 months.
Back after Christmas.
Oh, so that's the time frame that you're looking at too.
You have to do minimum 90 days coming into New Zealand.
Otherwise, you get paid
as
for
New Zealand citizens get it covered by the government if you come back for 90 days.
Oh, sorry. I think I've probably missed a part of the conversation. So you're not moving there, obviously.
No.
But
no.
What did you apply for? Some kind of visa then?
I don't need a visa because I'm a New Zealand citizen.
You have to be, at the moment, you've got to apply to be eligible to come into the country. They've got to make sure that you are actually allowed to enter the country.
Yep.
Otherwise, you can't get on the plane.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So
you've got to apply to exit Australia. So you need that approved.
I'm trying to get down to Tassie next month, and I've got to apply to get into Tasmania and back into Queensland. I mean, it's probably just formality, but you've still got to make sure that you're not flying through Victoria.
It's pretty interesting. It's very, very stressful, but it is what it is. And I completely understand the reasons for doing it. And if they get the border bubble working, brilliant. If not, we have to do 2 weeks quarantine on the way back. It's what we signed up for, so it's sort of on us. But,
who knows how that will go.
Who knows?
So minimum 90 days. So you're going to be there for at least 9. Do you think you're going to stay longer, or will you just take it as it comes?
That's a very political question.
Yeah.
And if I said that we were going to stay longer and my wife thought that we weren't going to be back in Australia for Christmas, I might be in a lot of trouble. So, Robin, I'm going to decline answering that.
Plead the fifth.
But the plan is for 90 days.
Okay.
When is that? But is that before Christmas officially?
Just before Christmas.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Kind of works out all right.
Yeah.
But it's just great to be here. Yep.
And you're all settled in, and mum
all
and
settled
dad
in.
are taking care of you.
Yeah, mum and dad are good. The COVID tests weren't quite as bad as the one you got. We just got the one up the nose, we got two up the nose. But my 6-month-old didn't even batter an eyelid at it. He was totally fine.
Did they test them?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't think they were testing the young ones.
Yeah, 6 months is the start point.
Jeez.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, that's why I went and got my test done, was so that if I came back positive, then my 2-year-old, I would go.
Exactly.
Because she's been sick as well.
Right.
Yep.
She actually is the one who got sick first and then gave it to me. But I just said, I'll go get the test. If I'm negative, then we're not going to even attempt to shove something up her nose, because it's going to be horrific.
Yeah. So it would just not happen with my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all my news. I've got a nice shiny new website. Got some jobs, some sketches, but that is pretty much it.
Cool.
That picture that you sent us, or I can't remember if it was public, of you guys on the plane. It was just such a, I can't even remember the last time I saw a flight that looked like that.
Yeah.
Where it was just you guys and nothing. I mean, you see that when you're the first people on the plane, but that's about it.
It was totally bizarre. So there was 40 people on our flight that held
crazy.
300.
I had a flight like that in 2003, something, flying to Fiji. My parents flew me out there because they were already there, and I jumped on the plane. I wasn't able to drink. I wasn't quite 18, but I remember there was no one on the flight, and they just kept giving me free beers. So it's like fun. It's crazy being on a plane like that.
So strange. Yeah. We did have a cheeky glass or two of champagne on the way. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to get down to Tassie to visit a mate of mine, and they've changed they are about to change their policy, Tasmania, on the 26th of October. So I'm sort of hanging out for that.
Right.
But because it's changing so rapidly, I've had to say to my boss, I may be taking this week off. I can't tell you now. I can only tell you a week before. Because who knows? Not too long ago they were talking about the Sydney numbers rising. So it's real up and
very,
there.
very fluid, yeah.
And I guess with you guys, from your perspective, you've got to be ready to, obviously within reason, but you've got to be ready to react just in case something like that happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So don't expect any
news from Auckland
from Bryan for the next few weeks or months.
So I'm not sure if we talked about this at all on the podcast. I think we must have talked about this.
No, we didn't. And I remember being so annoyed that, Damien, I loved our episode. It was fantastic. But all I wanted to do was hear about the damn
That's right.
staircase.
Okay, so if anyone's followed me on Instagram, they would have been seeing that I had started this mammoth job of a double height curved staircase. It's really one curve that is replicated twice on a 3-level house. So it's not a full spiral, it's like a 90-degree curve, and that's happening twice, and they make a lot more sense. You can actually scroll back in my Instagram and see like a SketchUp rendering of how it's going to go together. It makes a lot more sense.
So you're not just doing one floor to another, you're doing multiple floors.
Yeah, so it's one floor to the next, and then that floor to the top floor.
Okay, and it's 90 degree on both staircases, or 45 and 45? Okay.
90-degree wind, and then you come up from the ground floor to the mid floor, and you're turning 90 degrees, and then you're standing on the mid floor, and then you kind of turn back and face the stairwell, and then you're turning another 90 degrees on top of the stairwell you just walked up on top of.
I'll go back and look at the picture.
Yeah. So,
and this is all timber. There's no steel.
Well, there's a lot of steel, and it mostly is hidden, the parts that need to be. So I'll run through a few things. We've got the stringers are 300 by 65, and they're 10 layers of 6mm birch ply, which should actually only be 60, but whatever, they're slightly different, and so it's ended up coming out at 65 mil thick. So they're not exactly 6mm ply. So we have a full-scale form that we've made in the workshop, and which only just fits. I mean, this job only just fits in my workshop. And so we cut up like 22 sheets of birch ply and worked out a way to glue these things up on the mold, like craziness trying to glue up how many pieces. I can't remember how many pieces. I think it's 22 pieces. No, that can't be right. I feel like I want to say it's 22 strips of full-length plywood per stringer, and each stringer took 2 kilos of dry powder glues mixed up with water.
Wowzers.
So each stringer took, what did we make up? About 5 liters of liquid glue, something like that. So that was interesting. So we had to come up with a whole solution to like glue up all these pieces quickly enough that we could actually handle them and get them clamped up inside the kind of glue manufacturer's time. And
I missed you. The type of glue was what? It was a 2-part.
It's a urea resin glue. So it is called, it's made by DAP. It's called Weld Wood.
Yeah. I remember you recommended that to me when I was doing the veneers on the
it's not
the
great
fronts.
for your body or anything else, but it's a bloody good glue. And so
why have you gone with that over something like a traditional PVA or?
Well, so open time is pretty decent. Like, I was getting more than they were saying, probably because of the temperature and humidity at the time, but we get an hour working time with it. And probably you could push it to 2 hours, I think, working time. And it takes a full 12 hours to set and under clamps. And so you mix up the dry powder with some water, and we ended up doing it in like massive buckets, and I got like a drill mixing thing to mix it all up, and just like pouring it on with like Tupperware containers and then spreading it out with a notched trowel. And I made like this glue bath that would put the piece of plywood that we needed to glue up in this little tray, pour it with glue, spread it all out, and then just kind of slide it out of the little glue tray to keep it all the glue contained, and then we could reuse the.
Such a mess.
Well, we contained most of it. There wasn't too much dripping on the ground and stuff. So I was actually pretty surprised at how clean we ended up being. The first glue up took us an hour, 55 minutes, And the last one took us about 30 minutes. So we got pretty good at gluing them up. So it took us 2 weeks to make the 4 stringers. And it's funny, like there was 2 weeks worth of work and you're like, holy crap, that's a lot of work. But that's just like the start of the job. Like that's just what you need to start making stairs, is having the stringer. And then we had to like veneer the edge of it and, you know, do all the plumb cuts and all sorts of stuff. So the hardest part with this job is actually the structural part of it. Like you were asking Brian, there's a huge plate which connects to the floor joists. It's 10 mil steel by 240, as big as the joist, 240 tall, 10 mil thick, and it's got these giant 8 mil flanges which hang off, sticking out, which are embedded into the stringers, which we've got to hide. So we've got to veneer over these flanges so you can't see them, and just crap tons of work. I worked out how to do it because there's no drawings for this. Like I was really surprised. Not engineered. There was no engineering for it.
Wow.
I got the plans and it just had the plan view of a stairwell with a curve on it, and it just said curved stairs. And I was like,
Joey.
Yeah.
How does it pass? I mean,
and I was like, where are the technical drawings? Like, how do I make this? And they said, here's the PS, or what over here they call a PS1, which is like the approved engineer's drawings, like you might call like generic engineer's drawings. And I was like, okay, well, this will be interesting. I didn't know there were generic curved stairs plans. So I open it up and it's just a straight set of plans, like a straight set of stairs for like 12 steps high. And it says you can use a 300 by 50 for your stringer, and that's all you have to do. And I'm like, what is this? Like, you guys have got no clue. So, and that was kind of my first, like, something's a bit off. Something's not quite right here. And so when I priced it, the lady I'm dealing with, comes straight back to me almost immediately and said, why is it this much? Like, a normal set of stairs only costs like $2,000. I'm like,
this is not a normal set of stairs.
Like, do you know how much work is involved in this? Like, this is outrageous amount of materials and work, and like, to put it into perspective, the steel work that is involved, I just paid the bill for, which was $10,100 for the steel. So it's like, it's not any small amount of stuff. So I drew it from scratch. There was no drawings, there was no 3D renderings of it. There was just like, here's an example of what we want, and this is the dimensions of the stairwell. So I drew the whole thing up, worked out how to do the engineering, then found an engineer who knew how to deal with spirals, and got him to prove my method, and he made a couple of tweaks to it, but essentially said, yes, this is strong enough to take the loads involved and everything else. And so that cost $5,000 for him to stamp those.
But they wouldn't pass inspection, surely. Surely they wouldn't be able to get it approved.
What wouldn't? Sorry?
Like, if you didn't have engineering plans for them,
you cannot do it, and certainly not in New Zealand. I mean, you're talking about a structural element that is going to hold people's lives up over 3 stories. Like, it has to be engineered. And I mean, that's something that kind of still keeps me up at night a bit, where I'm like, I hope the hell this is strong enough, because like there's a long drop down the stairwell. So essentially what we've got is 2 big stringers that are curved, treads that you walk on, and because of some of the regulations and because of some of the engineering involved, we have to put steel underneath each tread that connects the stringers together. And so there's a lot of steel on each stringer holding the 2 things together. The balusters are like solid steel rods holding up a solid maple handrail. So at this stage, we've got all the stringers made, all the handrails made, most of the holes are drilled for installing the balusters. I've got all the main steels ready to install. I was meant to install the stairs 2 weeks ago, and then I get the phone call, the email saying
From the husband.
saying, oh, can we just hold off on this job? So what happened was, during all of this, the same construction company said to me, can you price a set of front doors for us for another job? I said, sure. Did that, bit of backwards and forwards, never heard back. Then they say to me, oh, we'd like to go ahead with those doors. When can you start? I'm like, oh, well, I'm right in the middle of this giant set of stairs, so once I finish the stairs, I can start the doors. So then a few days later, they said, let's put a hole in the stairs, and can you get the doors done? Because we really need them like ASAP. And I was like, wow, that is not, it's not that easy. It's just to stop a job which has completely taken over the workshop. And I was on the verge of saying no, and then I was like, well, it's going to be a cool job to do the doors and for the same client. So I was like, okay, I'll pack the stairs off and I'll start your doors, and then in 2 weeks time when we finish the doors, we'll get straight back on to the stairs. We're only about a week and a half away from installing, and then we'll just come back and install your stairs. So, and then it turns out that they said to me, oh, well, you don't have to come straight back to do the stairs. Why don't you wait 8 weeks and then do the stairs right before Christmas?
What?
And you've complained about storing people's projects in the past.
Yeah. So I'm like, are you guys serious? Like, this is not cool. Like, I need to be paid for this job. Like, I'm not going to not be paid for 2 weeks when it's pretty much finished. So what it turns out is that right from day one, I had asked them, I said, when do you want the install in the construction process? The best thing I can think of is that you should jib plasterboard paint the stairwell, at least have that ready, and except for a few patches where I have to actually attach the stairs to the floor joists, and then you can fix up some of those patches after the stairs go in. Just quite small bits of plasterboard that needs to be fixed up. They said, yeah, that sounds like probably a pretty good plan. And when I went to measure on site, the site manager says to me, how long is it going to take? And I said, well, 6 or 7 weeks. And he said, oh, well, we're about 6 or 7 weeks away from being watertight. Why don't you just start now and you put the stairs straight in as soon as like the windows are in? And I said, well, that seems pretty early to me, but if that's what you want, that's up to you. So I said, you guys are going to have to try and jib around all the stairs, and you're not going to be able to have scaffold in the stairwell. And he said, oh, we just need the stairs in so we can get up and down. And I was like, all right, it's up to you, man. So now it turns out that they don't want to do that, and they want to wait till the jib is up, like my original plan. The problem is I've started the job and it's almost finished. So there's a bit of backwards and forwards because they're wanting to delay that as much as they can while pushing me to get these doors done. They have now failed to pay me my progress payment for the doors, and I think what's happening, I think they've just got some cash flow problems as a company, and so it's starting to ring some bells with me that both jobs could end up going sour, which is not great. I'm all paid up for both of them, apart from some labor for the doors. There's no money outstanding, but especially with the stairs, my final payment is quite a bit of money, and that is the profit for me for that job. Like, that's actually going to pay me so I can buy some food. So,
as you were saying, you've been putting off all the other smaller jobs.
Yeah.
With this one in mind, yeah.
That's right. So it's just a bit of a pain in the ass at this point where they're refusing to talk to me about why they haven't paid my progress payment, which they insisted on having, and now they don't want to pay it. So it's a pain in the butt. So I told them that I've stopped working on the doors because they haven't paid me. I'm meant to be installing them this week, but they're not ready because they haven't paid me. And so it's interesting. I mean, that seems like kind of typical my story for some reason, but
Unfortunately.
you know what struck me the worst, and I don't know, Bryan might have some experience with construction companies who probably shouldn't be construction companies, and it's a bit hard. You don't really get to know what's going on until you've been to a site a few times and you start knowing who's meant to be in charge of the site, and I was really disheartened when I met one of the site managers and just had no basic understanding of the building, how the building process went. And I was talking in pretty mild builder language, but you could see it's just like going straight over his head, and he didn't understand, especially like with the doors when I was talking about he would have to do the head flashing. I would install the doors, but he will have to do the head flashing and do the sill flashing, having everything ready for me. And he didn't understand what that was. Like, and I was just like, come on, now you are the manager, site manager, and you don't know what a sill flashing is for a door or window. I was like, oh God, like, how does this happen? Like, and because you don't meet these people when you're doing, especially working for like a bigger company, if you're working for a company as opposed to an individual, you don't get to meet these people who you actually be working with. You're meeting with some, essentially, I'm not actually sure what the title of the person I've been dealing with is, but they are like the face of the business, you know, not the hands-on person. So it's been a bit frustrating having to, you know, you can see things sliding, and I'm trying my best to keep things as good as we can have them, because I know I have to finish the doors job and the stairs job with them. But, you know, having I think all of my payments from them have been late, but they're just getting later and later, and it's like, I shouldn't have to deal with this when you guys insisted on having a payment structure that we have, and you've signed the contract, and now just, you know, I can't make you pay me, but, you know, come on. It's just a bit silly at this point. It's annoying when you put so much work into something, and then you know, and it starts to feel a bit like things are going sideways, and so then your enthusiasm for the job wanes as well, and you end up kind of like, now I've just got this giant thing sitting in the corner of the workshop, and you know, it's been 2 weeks since I worked on it, and now I don't even know where I was, and I know I'm going to have to try and unpack everything back out and like work out where we were, and like, you know, get back into the swing of it, and it's going to be a pain in the butt. But
well, they're beautiful doors.
Yeah,
they are cool, man. That's why I wanted to do the job, that's why I kind of thought I should, if I pass it off, it's going to go to someone who's going to do a crap job, or they're just going to get some kind of whatever doors, that because no one else will probably do that, a design. And
can you talk us through the structure of them, and how they're front doors, are they?
Yeah,
so they're external. Because they're going to be flashed. Yeah,
so the external doors, they are fully covered. They've got this giant big roof that they've added to this house, like a, you know, you'd have a place where you drive your car around, like a roundabout, and underneath the cover get out and then drive through, so that kind of thing. So it's a big showy entrance.
very la-di-da.
Yeah,
wow.
we've all got those, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because the actual house does not need or warrant a big drive-through. Like, it's an old like 80s kind of ramshackle thing which has had this giant makeover, but it still doesn't look like it should have this big entrance. But whatever, I'll build your doors. So we've got double doors, which originally was going to be one giant pivot door, and then the client really wanted 2 doors, so I said fine. They're a little bit small for a double door. They're only 620 wide each, which is pretty narrow because usually with a double door set, you only use one door most of the time.
Yeah, one wide, one narrow.
Yeah, and so they want a double door that's equal, and so you only have a 620 wide, which means the secondary door is going to have to be used a lot more, so I need to kind of allow for that to happen. So what we've got is a cedar frame, 36 mil thick, which is mortise and tenoned, pretty basic frame, and that is then infilled with 2 layers of 18 mil plywood, which is kind of glued and screwed into a rebate in the plywood in the cedar frame. So I've got the cedar frame of the door, 4 sides, which has got nothing in between it and nothing inside of it. Until then, I put plywood, like the main body of the door is plywood with the cedar frame around it.
So it ends up being solid core.
So it's a solid plywood core, quarter sawn cedar plywood, and then we cut a whole crap ton of 3 mil oak veneers, and the pattern is a chevron pattern. So all the little pieces are cut at 45 degrees on each end, and so we make like this kind of chevron-y up and down zigzaggy pattern. And it only took me 2 days to glue all those pieces up. So it's 816 pieces or something I did in 2 days, which was pretty good going, I thought. So I just kind of glued them all up in strips on a melamine board. And then once I had all these strips of like just chevrons in 2 pieces, kind of making an up arrow, and then I could like joint all those edges on the sliding table, and then glue all those strips together to make the full width of the door.
How thick are those pieces again?
3 mil.
And I can't remember from the pictures. Is it end grain or is it?
It's quarter sawn oak. So
okay, so it's not the end grain. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not end grain. So I managed to find one really big wide board, which I thought would do the whole lot, and it did almost. So almost all of the wood is from one plank. So the grain, colouring, and everything is pretty similar. There's the odd bit of darker wood here and there. So what I actually did is it's pretty cool. I think it's a good tip. So I ended up with like this giant stack of these little pieces. Each piece is only 107 mil long or something. So I had this giant stack of these little bits of veneer. And what happens when you cut timber in that way? Because as you take strips, cut little strips off the plank at the bandsaw when you're making the veneers, and they kind of stay pretty much together where they came off the saw, and then when you cut them all up into little pieces, you end up with kind of a pattern of coloring where all those little pieces kind of were out of the plank, and so you end up with strips of very similar colored pieces of very similar grain structure. And when you look back and see a finished product, you can kind of see where one plank stopped and then you started cutting the next plank because the grain's slightly different or it's from a slightly different part of the board, and you have 10 that is that color and the next 10 are a slightly different color but all the same, and it kind of looks a bit shit. So I poured all the pieces out onto the floor and just kind of mixed them all up and kind of did my best to de-patternize it. And it ended up with a much nicer random pattern of coloration over the doors. So they've come together really, really well. I'm super happy with how they fit in the frame. I've made this really cool, installed this really cool hardware in the bottom edge of the door.
I was just about to ask you that. Yeah. That is a neat little bit of kit. Yeah,
I kind of knew they existed. I've never used them before because you have to rebate. It's a groove. You've got to cut a reasonably big groove in the bottom of the door, but this was a smaller version. So the groove I had to cut was only 14 by 30, I think, which is not too bad, especially and then you slide this big kind of aluminium.
So 14 wide by 30 deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you slide this big aluminium kind of gizmo into that groove. And you can trim it to length depending on your door. So when you order them, you've got to order them in certain size brackets, depending on how far you're going to trim it down. And so once you install this into the bottom of the door, it has like a little button on the end of it, on the hinge side of the door. So as the door shuts, and the door shuts against the jamb, it pushes a little button in, and the weather strip just shoots down out of the bottom of the door and just seals against the jamb like perfectly. And you can adjust how much it drops, and you can adjust the angle, how if it's out of angle, out of square with the door and the jamb out, you can adjust the angle, and it's bloody awesome.
It is such a satisfying video to watch.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how many times you actually did it in the workshop.
I just
who are the manufacturer?
It's the company is Raven, Raven. So typically you probably see their products in Bunnings as the little rubber strips you can buy to like seal leaky windows and stuff. But if you look at their range on their website, I actually don't use their website. I go through a wholesaler, but they've got a huge range, like probably thousands of products, all to do with different types of weather stripping, different types of door seals. I mean, anything you can think of, they've just got awesome, and it's pretty good hardware. And you can tell it's manufactured, and like they manufacture it as cost effectively, shall I say, as they can. I mean, it's not cheap, but like it's bloody good stuff, really.
It's pretty fail-safe as well, because it's not like, it's just a spring release button, yeah?
Yeah, it's just, so thinking about how it works, what happens? It always wants to be sprung up into the door.
Yeah.
And so as it pushes shut, the lever just pushes it down, so the spring's always wanting to pull it back up. So as soon as you open the door 2 millimeters, it's enough to release the switch, and the whole lot just sucks back up into the door and releases all that friction and opens up.
So I've got that version, the one from Bunnings, same brand. But this one you attach on the outside of the door.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of it. Yeah.
Now thinking of it, I'm just wondering if, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to attach it on the outside and not put it in the middle. But anyway, I installed...
Yeah, no, they make different versions, yeah.
Okay. I installed that on the outside of for the shop, on the outside of both doors.
Right.
And when we had we had some flooding about a year ago, I stopped coming into my usual door because the flood water had gone up above the door.
Oh, wow.
The seal was, there was a trickle coming through, but the seal was keeping the flood water out.
Awesome.
That's how good they are.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of pressure coming down on them.
Yeah. I was amazed.
Yeah. You're reading the technicals. They actually say that the rubber, you shouldn't actually try and squish the rubber onto the jamb because it will, over time, wreck the rubber. They want to just kiss it, they reckon.
Yeah.
But I made it squish a little bit because it looks better, I think.
So going back to that pattern that you used, the reason I asked about it is because we've had a guy on the show before by the name of Nick Padula, and that's very much a thing that he does. But if I remember correctly, he done it with end grain, right? Yeah. And
it was his, because I had this giant plank of oak, and I'm like, right, I have to cut this up into a gazillion little pieces, and I was like, how the hell am I going to actually do this? Like, I don't actually know how to cut all these pieces exactly the same. So I actually was thinking about Nick's video where he made his pieces, but of course his were all end grain, and he had a completely different setup, and I was like, well, that's not really going to work for me. But I kind of took inspiration from him in that he used his sliding table saw to cut all the pieces evenly, and he had some jigs set up. So I kind of did the same thing where I made some jigs and was able to cut all the pieces off about four different jigs, which had to be cut up as I cut the pieces up. The jig had to be cut up as well, holding all the pieces. But the benefit of doing that, I probably spent an hour or two making these jigs, which eventually all just got cut into tiny pieces. But I only had to hand fit probably 4 of those little pieces, each of them just glued straight in. Like there was no trimming. So I got into a rhythm. So I think the first one took me an hour and 20 minutes, maybe something like that. The first strip of just two pieces coming together to make a chevron, and then you make a whole strip of those as long as a door. took me about an hour and 20 minutes. And I had to do 12 of those strips. And the last strip I did in 25 minutes. So it just got to the point where I was just throwing them together and just dip the edge in PVA and squish it onto the next one in line, and that was it. So
yeah, cool.
We managed to, and I had to vacuum press them down to the door blank, which is okay. My vacuum pump's kind of undersized, so I don't really get as much pressure as I wanted, but it worked. And the doors were like just too big, like about 10 mil too big for my big drum sander, but I pushed them through it anyway, just to and it just really knocked all the little lumps and bumps off that, and then we could just orbital sand them flat. So.
And the plywood, how thick did you say it was?
2 layers of 18 mil. So that's why I made the frame 36 right from the get-go. So that should be pretty, because just my experience, and now I've never worked with birch before, but plywood's never really straight, not like a door straight. It doesn't matter too much in this case because the frame is holding everything. And I actually didn't use birch ply. I used a really lightweight poplar plywood because I didn't want to make the doors too heavy. I just wanted something there, a substrate. So in this case, the plywood is screwed and glued into a rebate on the inside of the door frame. And so, you could have a twisted piece in theory, and the frame is going to hold it, but you don't really want that tension on there. The ply I had was pretty flat. I didn't have any issues with that. Because also the piece is actually only about 450 wide or something like that. By the time you have the cedar frame and inside of that, so 6'5", it's only about 4 something. So each piece of plywood wasn't very big.
You won't get much movement in that, and especially when you can squash it out with 2 pieces coming together. It's at that size, it's even less.
So overall, I'm really happy with the doors. It's just a pain in the ass dealing with the people who try and make me do things.
Cool.
Fun times.
What about you, Robin? What have you been up to?
I am working on my hallway renovation. So there's been a lot of painting. Talking about doors, I replaced my bedroom door, which was quite straightforward considering my house everything is so out of square. I managed to just pull out the existing jamb and put in a new one, and it worked pretty okay. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's close enough. And then I've started building a closet, so just a pretty simple closet with some top track sliding doors, which I've never done before, so I thought I'd give it a go. Pretty straightforward. But I talked to Leroy about it. I was having a conversation with him. I can't remember how we got onto it, but the one thing I was asking him was in terms of hardware, like, what hardware should you be going for? And at this point, I'd already bought the hardware, and it wasn't the good one. And I've got to the point now where I'm starting to hang the doors, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion because I don't know if you've done this before. If I take the doors and I whip them across, well, there's 2 doors, right? They're quite light doors, and I whip them across. They get a bit of a wobble as they go. Have you guys ever done a closet like that, or have you ever seen or heard of that happening? It's like a speed wobble.
It depends what track you're using. In my experience, typically the best kind of track has like a hollow square aluminium tube, and you have like a little dolly carriage with 4 wheels on it, which slides inside that aluminium tube.
Okay, which this one isn't. So this
is a lot more stable, because otherwise the other ones have 2 wheels. That sit.
But they move laterally.
And they sit on a little lip on the inside of the aluminium.
That's the one that I've got.
And they can kind of jump and wriggle around a bit like a sliding shower doors, which are always cheap as crap. And the problem with there's 2 what do I say? There's benefits and non-benefits, whatever that word is.
Pros and cons as well.
That's what I was trying to say. So usually with the bigger one, with the full square tube, is quite big, and it's hard to get two doors next to each other. Sometimes the actual track can be wider than the doors, and so you end up with a really big gap between the two doors, and it can just often look a bit crap, and you don't really want those big gaps. And so the trick is always to try and get the two doors as close as possible without hitting each other, and sometimes that means using the not so good track and having that aesthetic with not quite as good a actual usability. I would say just be gentle.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, it's probably not going to be too much of an issue because, as I say, you've really got to whip it. And the other thing that I thought about as well is if those wheels aren't perfectly coplanar, when you screw them from the top down, if they're slightly off, they are going to want to be jumping out the whole time as you're moving it. So they've got to be perfect. So I thought maybe, fiddle with that, maybe change the actual nylon rollers for something like a softer rubber. I don't know if that'd help, but
nylon typically is pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty
is that
quiet.
What you'd use?
Like rubber is good, but it wears, especially if it's not coplanar.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that sliding mechanism that I did for the dining table that went into the island bench?
Yeah.
I've put photos on. They were big nylon gate rollers.
That's right.
That I welded to the frame, and I just spoke to the client a couple of weeks ago, and they say it still runs completely true. There's been no wear in it,
Nice.
and that's a year under pretty heavy load as well. So nylon is the way.
That's the way to go. Yeah.
Sometimes what can cause it, Robin, is because on the bottom, typically you'd have a groove in the bottom of the door and a little fin at some
I
point.
haven't installed the guides yet.
So that will really stop stuff happening. And the trick is to have the groove as tight as possible, but still be free running. Like you don't want that friction of the little fin on the ground actually catching in a groove. But if you oversize it by a mil or something, like then the bottom starts shuddering.
Yeah, so the spec sheet says to cut a 6mm groove for the guide. So I cut the bit that I've got 6.3mm. So I cut a 6.3, and obviously it's never perfect with when you're using your router like that. It's really hard. So let's say it's at 7. The amount of play in that guide is ridiculous. So
how big is the fin? Only like 3mm or something.
Probably.
Yeah,
so anyway,
usually I just use a skill saw blade. That is enough usually.
I didn't even think of that.
Maybe do 2 passes with a saw blade would be enough.
Well, I just made my own guides today out of plywood.
Yeah,
so then you could get it really, really tight. And I think on my very orange pine floors, having some closer match in terms of the guides, with some plywood, it's going to look a lot better than this glaring white plastic thing that they give you. So I think it'll probably look nicer anyway. But I was quite surprised at just how much room there was, because there's enough that you can it
will smash the other door.
It'd knock the other door, and it's going to change what it looks like. It's constantly going to be riding it, because when it lines up with the door frame, it's there's so much movement. But other than that, it's been pretty cool, because I've had to do some framing to build it, and after watching them build, do getting the builders in to do the renovation and build a wall, it was quite cool, because I could watch them build the wall and go, that's how they do it. That's the sizes that they use. That's the sort of the method, and just repeat the process to build a very small wall. Sheet it. So then you figure out how you're supposed, if you're using cement sheeting or cement board, how you sheet it like that. So it's been pretty fun to do a project that isn't woodworking. It's just strictly building. So now I'm at the stage, as I say, literally just hanging, because I'm filming it, it's taking twice as long as it should. But I'm just hanging the doors now, and then a little bit of painting, and then I'll be done. It's a massive improvement over what it was.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw some of the Instagram stuff. It looked good.
Yeah, social media, I've just dropped off the planet at the moment. It's just
me too,
man. Yeah, well, Bryan, you got like a pretty good quote unquote excuse. I just can't seem to find the time at the moment.
I'm loving not posting. I'm loving not doing much on YouTube or Instagram.
It's super liberating, and the problem is, because I'm I'm doing a renovation, it's a lot hard. Like when I'm in the workshop, this is my space, and I can.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier, I find. When I'm quote unquote on site upstairs, like my wife's around, the little one's around. I can't make it the same amount of noise
stuff as well.
Yeah, so it's a lot more difficult. So I want to say I'm looking forward to getting back into the shop, but the next project is going to be a carport out the front.
Wow. Cool.
It's going to be one of those kits carports, and I really want to try and build it myself because it'll save me a bit of cash. But it's going to be a 7x7 meter. So, and at 2.8 clearance. Apparently, technically, I'm allowed to build it myself because it's under 11 grand worth of material, which is.
It's interesting how it's done by cost.
Yeah, that's
like who cares about how it's built?
it's 11,500. As long as it's less than that, I'm allowed to do it. I can build a structure in a cyclone area that could literally turn into like a frisbee and just cut through houses.
As long as it's 10 grand.
As long as it's under that amount. It's so bizarre. Can't touch my plumbing, can't touch my wiring, but yeah, so weird. Anyway, so that'll probably be the next one. Yeah.
I want to hear more about those rules, man. That's crazy.
And I phoned up 2 companies, got quotes from 2 companies and checked with both of them. Yeah, no, it's fine. We'll send you the plans and everything as long as you follow it. It's all good.
Oh my gosh, that's outrageous. Oh well, cool. Good for you. Good for you.
Have fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
All
right, cool. Let's bring it to an end because we've got 2 minutes. All right, so to everyone listening, hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. That really does help us out. The Shop Stool Podcast is available on iTunes and most other podcast apps. My name is Robin Lewis. Joe and Brian, thanks for hanging out. Take care, everyone, and we will see you in the next show.
See yous.
See you guys soon.